I was running Golden Palm Investment. I was doing the Doctor of Law program at Harvard Law, the MBA at Harvard Business School, a PhD in economic anthropology at the University of Birmingham, and a master's at Oxford, and writing a book all at the same time.
Wait, all at the same time?
All at the same time.
What?
And I was on almost 14 boards. I have accomplished a lot. I know that, but I have zero credit. I always say my brain is like 20, 30 internet tabs open at the same time, processing simultaneously. I've been a big champion of entrepreneurship and innovation and investing in a continent, but it's not an end in of itself. It's a tool. And the ultimate goal for me is sovereign dignity. Whereas Africans, we need to be able to take care of our own people, invest in our own people, heal our own people, and build our own people. If we look across the continent, right, Africa has about 16% of global population, yet we're responsible for 25% of the global disease burden. 1 in 4 diseases globally are in Africa. I lost a man, Francis Hukpati, who was my teacher going back to 1998, and I called him my father. Everyone in school called me his son, and he was a father to me. He was in the ICU for a long time. You know what killed him? Kolebu ran out of blood. This cannot continue. The single most important thing is if we can get our mindset and our values right, we can chart a different future.
10 years ago, Sangu Delle stood on the TED stage and told the world something it didn't want to hear. That after trillions in aid and a push for more trade, Africa is still poor. That microcredit was overhyped. That we were pouring money into survival when what we really needed was scale, infrastructure, jobs, indigenous wealth. Today, he's not just talking, he's building. As CEO of CarePoint, the largest indigenous investor in Africa's healthcare sector, Sangu is shaping a new model of Afro-capitalism. And he's sounding the alarm. Africa cannot rise without integration. Our political and economic systems must evolve, or we risk repeating the same cycles. Today, I sit down with Dele, one of Africa's most brilliant minds, scholar, entrepreneur, investor, systems thinker, for a rare and unfiltered conversation. We talk about vision, failure, leadership, and what's still holding Africa back despite all the talk, aid, and good intentions. This isn't just a conversation about Africa's potential. It's about courage. It's about breaking the old cycle, building systems, and finally, claiming our freedom. Welcome to The Seat, a Breakdown exclusive.
Traditional prescriptions for growth in Africa are not working very well. After $1 trillion in African development-related aid in the last 60 years, real per capita income today is lower than it was in the 1970s. Aid is not doing too well. In response, the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and the World Bank, push for free trade, not aid. Yet the historical record shows little empirical evidence that free trade leads to economic growth. The newly prescribed silver bullet is microcredit. We seem to be fixated on this romanticized idea that every poor person in Africa is an entrepreneur. Yet, my work and travel in 40+ countries across Africa has taught me that most people want jobs instead. My solution: forget micro-entrepreneurs. Let's invest in building Pan-African titans like Sudanese businessman Mo Ibrahim. Mo took a contrarian bet on Africa when he founded Celtel International in '98 and built it into a mobile cellular provider. with 24 million subscribers across 14 African countries by 2004. The Mo model might be better than the everyman entrepreneur model, which prevents an effective means of diffusion and knowledge sharing. Perhaps we are not at the stage in Africa where many actors and small enterprises leads to growth through competition. Consider these two alternative scenarios. One, you loan $200 to each of 500 banana farmers, allowing them to dry their surplus bananas and fetch 15% more revenues at the local market. Or two, you give $100,000 to one savvy entrepreneur and help her set up a factory that yields 40% additional income to all 500 banana farmers and creates 50 additional jobs. We invested in the second scenario and backed 26-year-old Kenyan entrepreneur Eric Mutomi to set up an agro-processing factory called Stawi to produce gluten-free banana-based flour and baby food. Stawi is leveraging economies of scale and using modern manufacturing processes to create value for not only its owners, but its workers who have an ownership in the business. Our dream is to take an Eric Mutomi and try to help him become a Mo Ibrahim, which requires scale, financing, local and global partnerships, and extraordinary perseverance. But why Pan-African? The scramble for Africa during the Berlin Conference of 1884, where, quite frankly, we Africans were not exactly consulted, resulted in massive fragmentation in many sovereign states with small populations. Liberia, 4 million, Cape Verde, 500,000. Pan-Africa gives you 1 billion people, granted across 55 countries with trade barriers and other impediments. But our ancestors traded across the continent before Europeans drew lines around us. The Pan-African opportunities outweigh the challenges. And that's why we're expanding Stawi's markets from just Kenya to Algeria, Nigeria, Ghana, and anywhere else that will buy our food. We hope to help solve food security, empower farmers, create jobs, develop the local economy, and we hope to become rich in the process. While it's not the sexiest approach, and maybe it doesn't achieve the same feel-good as giving a woman $100 to buy a goat on kiva.org, perhaps supporting fewer, higher-impact entrepreneurs to build massive businesses at scale, Pan-Africa, can help change this. The political freedom for which our forebears fought is meaningless without economic freedom. We hope to aid this fight for economic freedom by building world-class businesses, creating indigenous wealth, providing jobs that we so desperately need.
Oh, Sangu Delle, I am so excited to see you. It's been too long, hasn't it?
It has been too long. And you haven't, in fact, not only have you, I would say you haven't aged a second, but I think you've aged in reverse.
In reverse. Well, thank you very much. No, thank you. That's so sweet of you. And you as well, because I'm watching you walk in. I said, he looks literally the same. Catch me up on kind of what's happened in your life, because I know a lot has happened, but what's happened in your life over the past 10 years?
So over the past 10 years, a lot has happened.
Yeah.
We scaled Golden Palm quite significantly to PKUM of $100 million.
Wow.
A lot of the early bets we saw in entrepreneurs that we believed had scalable Pan-African models to solve a lot of the serious fundamental problems we have in healthcare, in education, in financial services. A number of them became unicorns.
Yes. Some of them, Flutterwave,
Dele. And so that side has been fantastic in terms of the validation of the thesis.
Yeah.
There are some issues related to that thesis and some evolving views there, but I think we'll get to that later. I served as CEO/managing partner of Golden Palm from 2006. In 2017, I stepped down to become executive chairman. And became CEO of a new company. We spun out of Golden Palm, what's now called CarePoint. So the idea being, if we look across the continent, right, Africa has about 16% of global population, yet we're responsible for 25% of the global disease burden. So 1 in 4 diseases globally are in Africa. Yet we're not 1 out of 4 people population-wise. And what worsens all of this and compounds it is the fact that we only have 3% of global healthcare workers. And this is with us at 1.3 billion today. We're projected in 25 years, that's around the corner, to be 2.5 billion. This is actually a very scary situation. And we've now seen massive rise in non-communicable diseases. NCDs in Ghana now account for, over 40% of the burden. And if you strip out infant mortality, it actually rises to 65%. So this is a very serious problem. And so with CarePoint, we said, look, how do we leverage technology, right? And do a brick and click model to be able to improve clinical outcomes, to scale, to be able to actually have an impact in making care more accessible, more affordable, and better quality.
What a big problem to take on.
Yeah.
But I think the way that you're doing it is interesting, right? Because when we think about solving many of our healthcare crises in Africa, it's through sort of an NGO mindset, right?
I forgot to give you the most important update of all.
Go for it.
I have a daughter.
Oh my God.
I have a 3-year-old, thank you. I have a 3-year-old going on 13 by her attitude. And I named her after my mom, which in hindsight sets me up for trouble because oftentimes I'm not sure who is the parent and who's the child.
Oh my God. What's her name?
Amira.
Amira.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful name.
Yeah.
Oh, congrats.
Thank
so you're
you.
a dad.
I'm a dad. And
how does being a dad change your perspective on things, if at all?
It changes everything.
Yeah.
Right? It changes everything. It fundamentally changes what matters. I've always been a man of faith, but I think it completely transformed my faith journey, right? Because when you have a child, it does something to you.
Yeah.
And praying for that child every single day, right? It really changes your spiritual journey. It's also completely changed what matters to me, right? All the ambitions that I had and all these goals and all of that are all secondary. They're all irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? I shared with someone the other day that what's most important to me now in terms of whatever it is I do is to bring glory to the kingdom and to bring pride and set an example for my daughter.
Wow.
Right.
And that you are a living embodiment of that.
Too kind.
You really are. And what blows my mind about you, Sangu, is just how young you are. Like you're just getting started. You barely scratched the surface, but you've done so much from Harvard. I mean, your profile, I'll actually do a profile and give some more background. Because if I were to go down the list, we wouldn't finish this interview. But you have done so much. And what I see, going back to the point that I was making about you solving a big problem in a very unique way, in a non-traditional way, I see you potentially doing for the healthcare industry what Dangote has done for commodities in Africa, right?
Yeah. So before I get to the model, something I want to address up front is being young and the breadth of accomplishments. So the interesting thing about being young, I always say, is we say that a lot in our context. Jesus died at age 33.
He sure did.
All right? Literally, the savior of the world was a young man. Right? And 1 Timothy tells us, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example. And so I always tell young people that this idea that you cannot accomplish great things because you are young is fundamentally flawed. Because the man who saved the world was not a 60-year-old or an octogenarian. He was young.
Yes.
Yet he changed the entire world. The second thing around the breadth of accomplishments is I have accomplished a lot. I know that, but I have zero credit. And I mean that sincerely, because what I've been able to do has truly been a manifestation of God. Why do I say that? I was running Golden Palm Investments.
Yeah.
I was doing the Doctor of Law program at Harvard Law, the MBA at Harvard Business School, a PhD in economic anthropology at the University of Birmingham, and a master's at Oxford, and writing a book all at the same time.
Wait, all at the same time?
All at the same time.
What?
And I was on, almost 14 boards. It is not humanly possible.
Like, do you have multiple brains?
It is
How
not
does
human.
that work?
No, it's not humanly possible. It is grace. It really is grace. And to be able to do that all with excellence, it is grace. That's why I say I cannot. If I take credit, I am lying to people. I am literally lying to people. It is grace. And God has also, I've been blessed by the Creator with, I'm neurodivergent. And so I always say my brain is like 20, 30 internet tabs open at the same time, processing simultaneously. But that comes from the Creator. And so it really truly has been grace that has brought me to this point. And that is, I would be disingenuous if I tried to take credit and say there's something innately special about me. The only thing that's innately special has been grace.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Incredible. I did not know you were doing all those things at once.
Yeah.
So back to my question about the problem that you're solving and the model that you're using to solve it. How do you think about that?
Yeah, so in healthcare, and I'll say healthcare is the current focus now, but it's part of a broader approach to say, how do we create socioeconomic prosperity for our people, right? I've always said that I've been a big champion of entrepreneurship and innovation and investing in a continent, but it's not an end in of itself, right? It's a tool. And the ultimate goal for me is sovereign dignity, right? Whereas Africans, we need to be able to take care of our own people, invest in our own people, heal our own people, and build our own people, right? So on the broader ecosystem, we did that through venture, right, on the Golden Palm Investments. And I say we because it's not just me, it's a team and a collective approach. And we've really pushed to back a lot of startups and to play a role in shaping the ecosystem. On healthcare that I've been focused on, there are lots of challenges. We have a lack of infrastructure. We have very limited medical professionals, especially when it comes to specialists. We have a massive financing problem. So we have problems with access to care, democratization of care, affordability of care, and quality of care. Right? How do we solve some of these things? So a core part of my thesis in building the healthcare system we built across Ghana, Nigeria, Egypt, we had also expanded to Kenya, and built a platform to serve 1 million Africans. And the goal was, okay, how do we scale this to serve 100 million and beyond? And a key part of that is technology, right? And it's not technology just for the sake of technology or technology just for the hype. But the reality is, even if you gave us $1 trillion to solve the problem of medical professionals, think of how long it takes to even train a neurosurgeon. By the time we're able to scale up, tens of millions of people will die. So the old way of doing things is simply unable to solve our problems in the short term. So we can build towards that, but in the short term, I believe we have no choice but to leverage technology. And emerging technologies like AI, for example, allow us to leapfrog in many ways and allow us to be able to leverage the limited human capital we have to enable them to do more. Automate things that don't require them to do, something simple like even a doctor. I'll give you something simple like a doctor typing their notes in the computer, as opposed to they being able to dictate and you kind of have AI convert that and to structure that, right? Being able to do predictive analytics, right? Where you build an algorithm based on language models, on data that you have, clinical data that you have, patient data that you have, and it will be able to pick up trends and say that, Sandra, based on what we've seen in her clinical history, we think she's at risk for XYZ, right? Because we don't have the infrastructure to deal with the challenges. So we need to invest heavily in preventive care and public health. That hands down has the highest return on investment in terms of healthcare outcomes.
And you believe that we can leapfrog, right? That's what I hear you saying, that we actually, that should be the goal, right? Is to, because right now we're behind. So how do we get ahead, right? And learn from the existing system, say, how do we improve it to serve our market? Where do you see the biggest challenges when it comes to unlocking this potential that you talk about?
The biggest challenge for me, number one, I would say is mindset, right? Why do I say that? Because mindset is so important. Because when you look at what Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore.
Funny enough, we're just talking about
him. A big part of what Lee Kuan Yew did was getting the people, rallying them around the vision and changing their mindsets. In fact, the impact he had on changing the mindsets of the Singaporeans, to me, was more important than building infrastructure or any of those things, right? Because what I say is, you can build, and this is why I'm very passionate about investing in education, right? I can build a bridge. I can build a road. I can build all these different things. And that's solving something one time in a snapshot. But if I invest in the minds that becomes problem solvers, the catalytic impact is exponential. Because they will not only be able to solve the current problems, but also the future problems. We have a mindset issue, a very serious mindset issue. I say the system, let's look around us. How we treat the environment. What we're doing with Galamsey. How we treat each other. We claim, and Gallup polls, if you look at Gallup polls, Ghana consistently is top 3 most religious countries in the world. And so if we profess the sort of faith that we do openly and publicly, why do we have the issues that we have? Right? Why do we lack integrity in our dealings? Why do we, have corrupt, we saw this in the last 8 years. Unprecedented corruption, endemic corruption. And how we treat each other, right? There's also a mindset problem in terms of how we need to have a certain sense of national consciousness and civic duty that is absent. There's too much of a what's in it for me. There's too much of an individualistic approach. And there's too much of a PhD culture, pull him or pull her down. So we're not collaborating. We're not uniting. We're not championing our own. Nigeria, I always say, with all the issues Nigeria has, most notably their atrocious jollof.
I agree, by the way.
Right? Look, my Nigerian friends, they know I love them. But as for the jollof thing, they know
it's not even a debate. But anyway, let's stay on the course.
One of the things I admire about Nigeria, they deeply believe in Nigerians. They champion Nigerians. They support their music. They support their movies. Go to Nigeria. Mention Dangote's name. And people speak with pride because they believe they can be the next Dangote. They truly believe it in their bones. Come to Ghana. Mention Sam Jonah or one of our successful people. Immediately they'll say, oh, that man cry, didn't he do this? That negative mindset is not going to attract blessings. Instead of you rather thinking, how do I learn from the example? And how do I get inspired by the example? Instead, it's the first thing you want to think of is critiqued. We need to change our mindset.
We did Ghana Legacy Honors, right, in Ghana a few years ago, in an effort to celebrate and amplify the trailblazers in our community, because that's what we do at Face to Face Africa and PanaGenius. And the reason why we stopped was exactly because of that. Mm-hmm. Because people started asking, we would, invite people, and it was like, why am I not the one being honored? And there was so much controversy around our choice of honorees. It made no sense to me. We were not proud to celebrate and to amplify people who in many cases have blazed the path for us to be here. We were rather looking for the spotlight. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't agree with you more. When it comes to addressing the root cause of that, where does that start? Is that the education system? Is that just a lack of patriotism? What do you think is at the core of this?
To me, it's a mix of things, right? Mm-hmm. It's what we call a wicked problem. And so it requires a multifaceted approach. Mm-hmm. Key part of that is education. Key part of that is, and when I say education, right, there's a difference between schooling and education.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, I have met some people who haven't had formal education, who are more educated than those with degrees. Mm. Having a degree doesn't mean you are educated in the way I think about it. Right? And can you think?
Critical
thinking skills.
Yeah.
Education to me also should involve civic education, moral education. We're losing our values. We're losing our sense of civic duty. And there's hope. When I look at Ashesi University,
which you're on the board of, congratulations on your appointment.
So I became chair last
chair
year,
of the board.
Which and I'll tell you something that's even interesting. Ashesi took a bold step in making a 30-something-year-old chair of its board. Yeah. I cannot imagine that happening in any of our public institutions. Right. Because they looked at it and they said, where is the merit here? What can this person do to champion what we're doing? Right? And it was purely through that lens. And to the credit of the other board members, almost all of whom are older than me, the culture was such that we're focusing on what's going to be best for the institution, as opposed to this small boy, this small girl, right? Ashesi gives me great hope. Why do I say that? Mm-hmm. Ashesi has built, Patrick has built, and the team at Ashesi have built an extraordinary culture, which has taken students, in spite of their bad learnings, and transformed them over the 4 years they spend on campus. I don't know if you know about our honor system. There's no invigilation in our exam rooms. Everyone thought we were mad when we did it. The students sign an honor code and they police themselves.
Wow.
They police themselves. There are no invigilators. Because for us, we believe that the real culture, how you know you have a real culture of integrity, is when people do the right thing when no one is watching. Doing the right thing when someone is watching is not integrity. That's performance. What you do when no one is watching, that is the sign of integrity, which is why we go to scripture. Christ critiqued the Pharisees for standing out, acting overly pious, and praying for everybody to hear them. He said, when you pray, go to your room. When you do good, don't let your left hand even know what your right hand is doing. That is real integrity. What you do when no one is watching. And Ashesi has demonstrated that. And when anyone who interacts with the students and alumni are blown away. And so it gives me hope to know that it is possible. And I also say, the same Ghanaian who will do certain things here, same Ghanaian, regardless of background, pick them up today, drop them in New York, drop them in London, drop them in Singapore, they'll become one of the best performers. So I always say that we innately have brilliant. We are able to perform, but somehow the system we have created is one that constrains that performance. The culture of mediocrity we've created is one that punishes excellence. So if you are the one that wants to champion excellence, you are too known. You are socially ostracized, right? You're isolated.
You become a threat.
You become a threat. You become a threat. And this cannot continue. I'm bereaved. I lost a man, Francis Hukpati, who was my teacher going back to 1998, and I called him my father. Everyone in school called me his son, and he was a father to me. He was in the ICU for a long time. We made some great strides in getting him out of the West. He was at Kolebu. You know what killed him? Kolebu ran out of blood.
They run out of blood?
They ran out of blood. By the time we were able to get blood, he died. And this story is not unique. When I posted about this on Facebook, I had hundreds of people reach out with similar stories. This cannot continue. It's 2025. It cannot continue. And that's the other thing that's also needed, right? Which I say is, a lot of times, we blame politicians. We cast the blame always at politicians. And yes, politicians as leaders bear some responsibility for where we are. But our political class is a mirror of us as a society.
Yeah.
Their corruption mirrors our corruption. Their mediocrity mirrors our mediocrity. Because look around. Look around at the institutions. Look around. Go to ministries. Look around and see what's happening. We've lost this sense of pride and this love for country. It's not there. It's not there. And we need to me, that is actually more important than anything else. It's more important than infrastructure. It's more important than anything else. More important than macroeconomic. It's the single most important thing is if we can get our mindset and our values right, we can chart a different future.
Wow. You know, I've been thinking a lot over the past couple of years about the concept of Africa rising. Because I'm going to be honest with you that I'm fatigued.
Not just you.
I'm tired of hearing about Africa rising. I feel like when I started hearing it, I was just a teen.
Yeah.
How long is it going to take for Africa to finally, is it supposed to take this long? And sometimes I feel like, are we cynical? Are we chasing shadows here? What is actually changing that is going to ensure that Africa rises? So from your standpoint, I hear you saying a lot of things that are fundamental: education, our mindset. And I think going back to our forefathers, Kwame Nkrumah, and we're seeing in the mirror now, and it's coming back in a really interesting way, right? With Trump's second term and kind of him becoming a friend, and I were talking about how he's become the unlikely Pan-Africanist because he is literally forcing us to look at ourselves in the mirror and to say, hey, we need to do better than what we've been doing. So when is Africa going to rise?
So I'll tell you that it's a mixed bag, right? There's nuance in this. On the one hand, a lot of the Africa rising narrative and rhetoric has mostly, if you look at a lot of the economic growth, we go through these great cycles and it's mostly highly correlated to commodity prices. So when commodity prices are high and we're flush, things are going well, then we say, yes, we're rising. But we're not. If you actually control for commodity pricing, you see that a lot of that economic growth is fueled by commodity booms. There's a lot of structural issues.
Systemic issues
that need to be resolved, right? But at the same time, I think that, several years ago, we at Harvard, we organized an event called Africa Leaders Speak. And it was Baba, former President Obasanjo, who stole the show. He was incredible. It was the former president of Tanzania, Kikwete, I think is his name. And then there was a former prime minister of Cape Verde.
Okay.
And so because they were former heads of state, they had the freedom to just speak their mind, which was very refreshing and amazing. And I remember, I had a conversation with the former Tanzanian president, Kikwete, and I told him, I was very charged, and I told him that you guys have failed us.
Yeah.
You have failed us. Get this impassioned stuff. And he was gracious and he listened. And his response, I'll never forget. He said, look, I understand the anger and the frustration. He said, but let me give you some context so that you can balance that with some grace. He said, when Tanzania became newly independent, they didn't even have 10 engineers in the entire country. They had so little resources in terms of human capital that a lot of things that we take for granted today, when you look at it through that historical lens, there has been progress. Right? There has been significant progress. If we look at even Ghana, there's been, with all the challenges, there's been great progress in education. There's been great progress in maternal mortality, infant mortality. There's been great progress in even the expansion of the roads being built. There has been progress. So I think it would be disingenuous of us to say nothing has changed.
Right.
No, there has been significant progress, right? You have more opportunities today than you did in the 80s.
Certainly.
Right? At the same time, the progress is not enough vis-a-vis our potential, and more importantly, vis-a-vis where we need to be able to take care of our increasingly young and fast-growing population. Because it becomes a crisis. We always talk about this. Is it going to be a demographic dividend or a demographic disaster?
I want to go back to 2015. Yeah. You delivered a TED Talk that took the internet by storm. It was the talk of town for weeks and months. Until this day, it's still a talk that a lot of people reference because you made a case that was unexpected, right? And your case was that your TED Talk was around, you proposed macro finance, right? As what you think is the solution, macro as opposed to micro, for Africa's economic rise, right, or development. Can you? I want you to just reflect or kind of take us back to the premise, right, of your argument back then, and if you still believe that to be the solution that we need.
Yeah.
Macro finance.
Yeah. So, look, back then I was critiquing microfinance, right? I believe then, and I still believe now, that when it comes to African problems and coming up with solutions, I always say the greatest poverty we have on Africa is not socioeconomic poverty. It's poverty of the mind and poverty of ambition, right? We are always thinking small, right? And small thinking is not going to create a transformation that we need.
Yeah.
So my issue I had was, for the sort of economic prosperity we need to create to lift hundreds of millions of our people out of poverty and to set them up for success, with all due respect, giving a woman a little bit, $100 to buy a goat, is not going to do that. I will concede, it will make a meaningful difference in her life.
Right.
I don't want to take that for granted. It will make a meaningful difference in her life. It would allow her to have extra income to take care of her family. I'm not dismissing that. But I'm saying in terms of creating the sort of economic prosperity that we need to grow as a country and as a continent, that's not going to cut it. We need to create jobs. Unemployment is so high. We need to create jobs. We need to create industries, right? And the only way we can do that is by thinking big, by going with scale. We're small.
Yeah.
Some of our countries, 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, I mean, we're small. But as a Pan-African market, we're 1.3 billion. But what do we do with that? How do we actually, we've operated across multiple African countries. Right. It is.
Ooh, a nightmare.
We could spend a week, right? And so we really need to simplify.
Yeah.
Regulatory, we need to, you know, I always say that I wish we had an African Scaling Act that all 54 countries pass. That just reduces the barriers and really facilitates and that would allow us to really take advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Yeah, which Honorable Chair Martin was just here. We were talking about that. He was one of the architects of that blueprint. And he talked about how it hasn't even scratched the surface, right, in terms of its potential. But the framework is there, is the implementation, right?
Look, here's the first problem we have.
Yeah.
I always say, how can we move goods and services across the continent freely when we can't even physically move?
Right, yeah.
If I take it's easier to travel with a US passport across Africa or a French passport across Africa than to travel with a Ghanaian passport. And so that's why I go back to mindset, right? Where is our African sovereign dignity? If we don't respect ourselves, why do we expect others to respect us? If we treat our fellow Africans the way we do, and sometimes exhibiting certain xenophobic behavior, how can you expect others to treat you differently? We really need to change. It starts with that.
Yeah.
If we are not able to unite ourselves as a people and allow for freedom of movement, where you don't need to have to get visas for, I mean, it's for me, doing business across the continent is exhausting. It's really exhausting.
And we're missing out on so much potential because of that. I'm curious, it's been about 10 years, a decade since you gave that talk. Do you see have you seen any progress at all, right, in terms of perhaps a more friendlier environment towards more intra-African trade? Are you optimistic based on what you're seeing now?
Look, there has been some changes. Like I said, it would be dishonest to pretend it's all gloom. When I first founded Golden Palm Investments, the venture ecosystem across Africa was under $40 million. The whole continent. 2022, it soared to 6 billion plus. So there absolutely has been that.
Yeah.
But with the recent macro implosion, it's collapsed to 2.5 billion.
Yeah.
Right? Africa is still receiving less than 1% of global VC. And within the VC that we get, there's structural inequalities embedded in it. There's gendering. My doctoral dissertation was actually tackled, among other things, looking at the gendering within venture capital. Women still receive less than 3%.
Yeah.
Even though we're the continent with the highest rate of female entrepreneurship in the world. In Ghana, Zambia, and other African countries, the rate of women entrepreneurs is higher than that of male entrepreneurs. Right? So I'll say it's a mixed bag. On the one hand, we've had some progress, but the problem is that a lot of the growth in funding is foreign dominated, so it's flaky, right? It's like, I say it's like being in an open relationship or being in a what Bumble would call intimacy with no commitment. They just come and go as they please.
Yeah.
We can't build long-term economic transformation around that,
yeah.
right? And I don't I don't blame them per se.
Yeah.
We should not be building our economic transformation around foreign capital. We have probably $500 billion, for example, in pension assets. Pension funds, let's take the US. How did it's not by accident how the US created, or Israel created, their entrepreneurial and venture ecosystems. It's not by accident. Their pension funds invested in venture funds because they have the long-term horizon. The government actively invested in research and development through a partnership with universities, which now is under threat. But for 80 years, the US government realized that to really invest in innovation, there are certain things that the commercial actors will not invest in because it doesn't make sense, or there's no clear sense of the return. But they recognize that, look, for America to be able to be at the forefront of innovation, it requires government funding at the level at which no commercial people are going to go. Our pension funds, we're not there's been some progress. In Ghana, there was liberalization where I think they can invest now a certain percentage of capital in alternative assets, but we're not seeing a lot of movement there.
And what about even a Pan-African pension, fund and
fund of fund structures? An Africa. Imagine if we had an Africa NASDAQ.
Oh my God!
Right, focus on startup. Because I say the problem also is, personally, I don't understand why we have country stock exchanges. It doesn't make sense. The Ghana Stock Exchange, how many companies are on it? What's the market cap of the companies? What's the liquidity? If you need to move $10 million, you crash the market. Like, volume is what? $1 million a day. A lot of times things don't trade. So we don't have deepened liquidity pools and we don't have sophisticated capital markets. But if we actually come together, why can't we have a Pan-African a stock exchange, or even at the very least regional? ECOWAS, East Africa Community, SADC. We're hindering our own progress because it's not rocket science, but it requires deep will, and it requires a lot of, goes back to the mindset. We need to have a come to Jesus moment.
Come to Jesus. What role do you think the African Union in particular should play in implementing many of the ideas and policies that we're talking about here? Because in principle, right, you would think like that an African Union should be the ones championing many of these things. But it seems to me that there's not really, aside from summits, you see a lot of summits, but beyond that, what's really happening with the African Union? And do you think that they have a role to play in all of this?
The big problem with the African Union, in my humble opinion, is that it doesn't have much teeth. It doesn't have much teeth. Right? As opposed to the EU, right? Which, and by the way, keep in mind that the idea for the African Union, architected by our first president, Sajifo, came decades before the European Union. Decades. I always say that if Nkrumah sees what the AU is today, he will weep and roll over in his grave. Right? We've set it up to not be successful in what it needs to be. Down to something as simple as, going back to what I said about sovereign dignity, us funding it, the AU itself, we're relying on China and other people to be, where is the dignity?
How does China build the AU headquarters?
How? Where's the dignity? Right? Where's the dignity? So until we start, and I'm not saying that we should not partner with the rest of the world. We absolutely should. I'm not saying we shouldn't accept capital from the rest of the world. We should. Europe developed, Japan developed the Marshall Plan, the US provided over $50 billion. I'm not disputing that. But for them to initially get to where they were, you have to invest in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You have to invest in yourself. You have to do the needful. We can't continue with business as usual. it can be demoralizing. But I continue to have faith in God and faith in the younger generation. Quite frankly, I'm not as optimistic about my generation. And I'll tell you why.
Why?
I used to be when I was younger. I thought my generation is going to come and we're going to do things differently and so on and so forth. But what I've seen, very sadly, is that people in my generation who had opportunities to be public servants and to make a difference sometimes ended up being worse than the others. I mean, the level of corruption we saw, like I said, was just unprecedented. And the difference I joked with a friend and I said, you know, one big difference was, I said, oh, the older generation, yes, they'll steal money, but, you know, they'll maybe spend money on their side girlfriends and maybe buy a car, travel. But my generation, our eyes open.
Yeah.
So they want to, you know, they know Bugatti.
Yeah.
The old generation, they didn't know those things. Social media has created a situation where their eyes and their ambitions have grown significantly. I have been personally disappointed when it comes to my generation. And my hope and prayer is for the younger generations. But I think that my generation, when we were growing up, railed against the older people. But it seems that we're now, it's been more, they should go away so that we can now come in and it's our turn to chop.
Oof. Sangu, I want to get your perspective on this. There is a saga, right, that is, I'm in Ghana right now, so we have to talk about it. The National Cathedral saga, almost 100 million unaccounted for. Well, accounted for, and it was supposed to be this National Cathedral. But we've seen the National Cathedral, and it's a community swimming pool.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hear stories like that, how does that make you feel?
National Cathedral, I have a nuanced view on it. I have a very nuanced view on it. My biggest problem with the National Cathedral was not with building the National Cathedral. My number one biggest problem with the National Cathedral was that the former president, the president at the time, in his address, made a vow to God to build this cathedral and told us as Ghanaians, we're not going to use public money. And I joked with a friend 2 years ago who was complaining bitterly about the state of affairs in this country. And I told him, I said, God said they know honor and promise. How much more human being? Right? But just think about that. A vow was made to God and that vow was never honored. Yeah. And that's why I told a friend of mine last year, I told him that from my perspective, in the spiritual realm, there's no way NPP was going to win the election. Because you cannot make that vow to God. Yeah. And not only did you break it, you use that as a pretext to loot funds. That's like, I mean, think about it. That's like me vowing that I'm going to tithe to the church. And then I go to church, I'm putting money in the collection box, and then I grab what's there and put it in my pocket. Like, just picture that visually. But that's effectively what was done. So number one for me is that was my problem. Before we even get to, we can have a debate about whether or not we should have a national cathedral. Right. That's a separate issue. But to me, once you said you were going to do it, you made that vow. Yeah. You couldn't do it. That to me is a problem.
What does accountability looks like in this particular situation?
There's been no accountability. I would say this, right? I was very vocal in critiquing the last government. I was very vocal. Okay. Paid the price for it also. I was targeted and victimized. I had 16 different incidents with the police.
No way, really?
16, including one in which I was assaulted by a police officer. I captured a lot of it on video. I shared it on social media.
For just sharing your thoughts
because I was criticizing the corruption. Wow. And because I was furious about what was going on. And I would talk about it openly and publicly, and I was victimized. It's no secret I was very vocal in supporting the current administration. All that said, if this government does not honor oral in bringing about real accountability, we're doomed. Why do I say that? The impunity we saw in the last 8 years, impunity with no accountability and no consequence, right? Look, let me tell you, it's human nature. The reason why someone will cross a red light in Ghana, but you won't dare cross a red, go and cross a red light in New York and see something. Go and do it and see something.
Yes.
When I'm traveling at the airport and I'm going through immigration at Kotoka, the way some of our own people talk to the immigration officers, you talk to the policeman, go to New York and try that. You won't dare, because there'll be consequences for it.
Yeah.
There will be consequences for it. And so you need consequences to be able to guide behavior. It's human nature.
Yeah.
If there are no consequences for the sort of looting and pillaging and impunity that we have, what we're going to do is we're going to institutionalize the sort of corruption we have, because everyone else will say,
what's to stop the next
what's to
person
stop?
from doing it? Yeah.
In fact, you'll be encouraged because you realize that
there are no consequences.
there are no consequences. And so for that, for the soul of our nation, and for if we do not create consequences for what has happened, the message we'll be sending to young boys and girls. Because already, when I was growing up, my parents told me, my aunties, uncles, the older people told me, work hard and you're going to make it. When I mentor young people today, I struggle with the questions they ask me. Because they tell me, the people who work hard don't make it. The people who steal do. The people who are corrupt do. So to me, the bigger problem is not just at the level of, okay, you've pillaged state resources, is what we're teaching young people. Because they don't know anything else. This is all they've grown up with. So all they've seen growing up has been this canker and cancer of corruption. And when they learn that there's no consequence for it, that is one of the most dangerous things, because we're going to raise a new generation that believes that there's no upside to hard work and to integrity. And that will see, and validated by their lived experience, that wealth, power, and respect come from doing the wrong thing.
So you believe that how President Mahama, the current administration, handles this situation can set a precedence, a really important precedence for our nation. That's what I hear you saying.
I believe that, and so far, I'll tell you that during the campaign, I was very active and very vocal in the campaign. I believe that one of the biggest, and probably the biggest reason for the unprecedented loss, I mean, it's the largest electoral loss in the history of the country. Was around oral. People were so deeply angry, right? And people want justice. They want justice. Because what I say is this, Sandra. Sometimes when we talk about the corruption and we talk about all these things, it feels abstract.
It does,
Right? Oh, this person's told. It feels abstract. But let me tell you what it means. In Nandom, my constituency, okay, we don't have any proper ER there. We don't have proper working monitors. We didn't even have oximeters. And my foundation had to go and donate that. We have schools. There's a school I visited that had one teacher teaching JSS 1, JSS 2, JSS 3. One teacher.
Wow.
Classrooms with no furniture, no textbooks.
You're talking about today?
Today.
2025.
Today. I did a tour last year. where my foundation is based, that we went. And so when you take public resources, that's what you're depriving people of. People die. People die. That's why I say that when you loot and pillage, there's blood on your hands. There's literally blood on your hands. And so there's a real consequence, right? There's a real consequence to all of this. And part of it is also, again, like I say, I like to be nuanced and pragmatic about solutions. We've created this problem. Why do I say that? During Obama's campaign, his first campaign, which I worked on, Obama at the time revolutionized the model. He had 30 million households contributing. $20, $50, $10, $5, you remember.
Yeah.
And that powered him to the White House.
Yeah.
So because of that, they had a stake in the democracy. They were shareholders in Obama because they literally invested their widow's mite and put him in the White House. And that's why Obama did whatever he had to do to deliver on his promise, especially when it came to Obamacare. Because he knew all these people invested in this campaign to achieve that outcome.
Yeah.
In Ghana, what do? We don't invest in our democracy. So instead, we have a small elite class, right? The oligarchy, business, corporate interest, high net worth people who fund campaigns, right? They fund the campaign. The campaign is now used to, there's a trickle down. Let's be frank, there's a trickle down. As a result of that trickle down, in a sense, when I win, I don't owe my lawyer. Let's be frank, I don't owe anything to you. Yes, you've given me the vote, but effectively, the person who funded it, that's the interest I'm now going to have to respond to.
Yeah.
So we also as a people need to get up and say, if I want XYZ, good government, am I prepared? And I should be prepared to take a stake in our democracy, to invest in our democracy. Second issue, corruption is nuanced. There's a political economy around corruption. And so if you just wake up today and you just condemn the corruption, you're missing the nuance. Now, I'll drill down. The last 8 years, my big problem with that particular type of corruption was it was so unprecedented. It literally crashed the economy. It set the country back so much. But when you look at corruption, which has pervaded multiple administrations, there's a political economy to it. Why do I say that? There is a real trickle down. I can tell you for free that politicians are not taking money and just putting it in their pocket. Some, of course, will go in the pocket, but there's a lot that goes back to the community. Let me give you an example. I went to visit an MP friend of mine. There were like 50, 60 people in line waiting to see him. I went to, he's stressed. And everybody is coming with problems. School fees, hospital bills, this, that, all these problems. So because the state has not solved the socio-economic problems of the people, they are going to this MP. If he doesn't solve their problem, he will lose. He will lose the next election. So what are you expecting? You're almost forcing him to be corrupt. No, like sometimes we have to have a frank conversation. You're almost forcing him to be corrupt. And so I've always thought that we need to think, me personally, I would even prefer a situation where you look at the math and you say, look, you know what? Political parties or whatever it is, let the state fund it, right? We'll have state financing. We're going to give $50 million to, because at the end of the day, when you think about it, if as an individual, I've taken my risk and I've given $10 million to a campaign, I'm not looking for $10 million back. I'm looking for probably 10x or 5x.
It's an investment.
It's a venture investment. High risk, high reward, if we're being frank. So there's a structural problem with how we designed our politics. And so if we just get up and say, end the corruption, end the corruption, end the corruption, you're not solving the problem.
You think it also has anything to do with this, particularly in Ghana, the two-party politics, right? Honorable and I were talking about that. Is it time for that to also evolve? MPP, NDC, and every 4-8 years, right? There's a switch somehow, a break in continuity. So even if you have one administration doing something incredible and investing in the long term, when the new government comes, they stop everything and start from scratch.
You know, I'm not a big believer in third movements, and I'll tell you why. When my father, before he became Nandomna, when my father was national chairman and leader of CPP for 2 terms, I did a special research project for him where I looked into the viability of really creating a proper third force. The reason it won't work is, it is almost like the analogy I want to give is this. At one point in the push for decentralization, the argument was, the centralized approach, you were having too much corruption. And so decentralization was going to solve it, right? And helping to curb it because there's greater accountability, you're closer to the people. The person in Nandom cannot go to the Minister of Water, does not have access to the Minister of Water Resources to be like, what's happening with water? But they can walk into the municipal assembly and have a conversation. But the reality is, all it did was decentralize the corruption. So having a third, the problem that we have is not lack of options. That is not the problem. Because the same issues we have exist across the board. So if you get up, and that's why I was never a fan, and I was never optimistic about a lot of the third force movements that came out, because it is the message. What was the message? The message was, we are tired of MPP NDC. Try us.
Yes.
Trying us is not going to solve anything.
Yeah.
Right? Without actually speaking to or having a clear blueprint for how you can very seriously tackle these problems. And it's going to take a bipartisan approach.
Yeah.
Because the problems we have, give you a simple example. We need to reform our civil service. Nobody wants to touch it because it's political kryptonite. Nobody wants to touch it. You touch it, the blowback will be enormous. But we have to. We have to. The only way we can do that is by taking a bipartisan national consensus approach. The other thing I say is on the corruption bit. Me, I'm a big believer in let's institutionalize it and do lobbying like the US does. And you make it transparent.
Right.
You make it transparent. You tax it, you make it transparent. You do it in a way where instead of trying to go and bribe to get a contract that you are not, qualified for, if we carve out and retrench the civil service, you create a situation where they can work as lobbyists in terms of actually helping you on the technical side. This is what you need to do based on my experience. This is that. It would make more sense for us to do that than to sit and pretend and, do holier than thou and act like political Pharisees when we know what the reality is.
My goodness. Sangu, you're probably not going to like this question, but I know my audience will literally strangle me if I don't ask, right? Do you have any aspirations to get into politics here in Ghana?
So here's going to be my answer, right? I've always been passionate about politics, right? I've always genuinely believed in the ability to leverage politics and to use governance to transform people.
Yeah.
I've always believed in that. And I've always been passionate about how we can reform government, reform our politics, and just improve the lives of people. With my faith journey, so I've always had the interest, but with my faith journey, there's been a fundamental shift in that. in the sense that, if you remember, I told you that my number one goal is to bring glory to the kingdom. So, if it is the will of God, so be it. If it is not the will of God, no. So I will only get involved in so far as it is the will of God. Because there are so many different ways in which you can make a difference and you can impact the country.
Absolutely.
Right? And so for me, that is the honest, genuine truth. I know some people will say, oh, he's giving you a politician's answer. He doesn't want to, but I'm being frank.
Well, let me just say this. I'm glad that you're leaving it open in that way, right?
Yeah.
I was worried that you were going to say, no, absolutely not. So, and I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
That's the perfect answer.
It's the truth.
It's
my truth.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. So, Bill Gates recently announced that he is giving away much of his wealth to Africa, almost $200 billion.
Yeah.
First of all, what do you think about that, his recent announcement? And what are the ways, especially since you're in healthcare, right? You firsthand see the challenges that we need to confront. What are the ways that you see his, gesture being utilized effectively on the continent? How can we make the most impact with that intent?
Look, I think for all the criticism some people bring, I always say that what Bill Gates has done is extraordinary. Doesn't have to. It's his money. Doesn't have to. But he's put in his money where his mouth is. And he cares very deeply about the issues.
There's a lot of concern that his model doesn't work for Africa.
That's fine. So there are people complaining, come up with your model then. The person has his money. He's saying he wants to. He's not forcing it down their throat. It's not by force for you to take. It's not like he goes around and forces it in people's pockets. He's coming up with his model. If you don't like his model, you don't have to take his money. You should, and that is where I think we also need to be in general as a country and as a continent. Have your North Star. I tell young people I mentor, have your North Star, know where you're going. And anything that comes needs to fit into your North Star. But sometimes money is coming, we like to adapt, and so we end up being spineless.
Yeah. We don't have the vision for
and
ourselves.
that is one thing I love about Rwanda.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yes.
Rwanda has its very clear goals. If you fit into those goals, yes. If you don't fit into those goals, they're not interested. They are not going to just collect money from you to do something that is not in alignment with their national development goals. Right? So the onus is on us. What is our worldview? What is our own vision? Where's the clarity of that vision where we say, this is what we want to do? And everything else should only be in support of that. Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you, even it's not just at a country level, at a personal level. It's one of the things I'm doing very differently now. Because before, you're involved in so many things. Now I just ask, is this in alignment with my North Star? If it is not, I'm sorry. No matter how great it sounds, no matter how, whatever it is, it's not in alignment.
Yeah, well said. My God, we could go on and on and on. I have so many more questions I wish I could ask you, but I'm being told that we have just a few minutes, or that I need to wrap up. Do I have a few? Okay, that I need to wrap up. So please promise me that we get to have another conversation. I want to talk to you about Russia and China and the youth of Africa today who seems to they all kind of want different partners for Africa. I want to get your perspective on that next time. So just promise me that we will continue this conversation.
You have
promise
my word.
On camera so my audience knows that
you have
there's
my
more
word.
to come. Thank you, Sangu.
It really is. It's my pleasure and my privilege.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a voice for us, for our continent, for the youth at a time that we needed the most.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure.
To God be all the glory.
Amen and amen.
Thank you.
My people, if you enjoyed this exclusive interview, then guess what? I've got so much more for you. Join our membership today and you will gain access to more exclusive behind-the-scenes conversations. And let's continue having this conversation together intimately and more meaningfully. I look forward to connecting with you there.